Starting the 2026 anime season, I had only two things I cared about watching. Firstly was You and I Are Polar Opposites Season 2, which started up exactly as sugary and sweet and cute and adorable as I needed it to be after last season's gut punch ending of The Ramparts of Ice, another anime adaptation by the same mangaka. She's actually on a kind of generational run right now, getting 4 straight seasons of baton passes between her two works, and they're both good works with good adaptations. She's kind of hit the mangaka lottery with that, and I hope she takes a well-deserved break before her next work. She deserves it. The other anime I wanted to watch this season was Goodbye Lara, an original work marking the 15th anniversary of Kinema Citrus, a studio I have literally no attachment to. I'm just a bit of a sucker for originals. Goodbye Lara has an episode 1 that reminded many people of Disney's The Little Mermaid, and yeah. Though more accurately, the story is pulled more from the Hans Christensen tale. Regardless, we hit the main beats of the story, involving the mermaid falling in love with a human, talking with a sea witch, she gets feet in exchange for her voice, love story, etc., but critically, rather than a Disney ending, we respect the classics, with a bit of a twist. Much like the original tale in 1836, Lara fails. She doesn't fall in love and get her kiss, and instead, she turns back into a mermaid, and the prince feels betrayed and deceived, and with this failure, Lara turns to sea foam, in all the grossness and terror it deserves. We then jump cut to her awakening from a seashell, much like at the beginning of the episode, but this time it is not a home full of life that she awakens in, but a home in ruins. She finds out what happens and barters a deal with the sea witch one more time. This time, if she succeeds, it is not just love that she will find, but she will also save her people. 300 years have passed and she's ejected from the sea into the modern day, drawn with care and love and in a way that takes your breath away for a moment, making you believe in the beauty of our world as seen from an outsider. Then we crash into Mari and the episode ends. Actually. We only see that character for 15 seconds in episode 1. To me, I wasn't really seeing a speedrun of The Little Mermaid, whether it be Waltz's or Hans's. I was, but that really wasn't what made me excited for the next episode. What excited me was the traces of a very different story I love very dearly. I was seeing echoes of NakiNagi. I'm going to attempt to vaguely structure this a little bit so I don't ramble as much. There's essentially 3 big crossovers or similarities or echoes between the two series. The first of these being the twist. Both NakiNagi and Goodbye Lara are very obviously inspired by The Little Mermaid, whether it be the Disney movie, the Hans Christensen tale, or the concept of mermaids and culture as a whole. Maybe a little bit of all 3. What they both do with this story is a bit of a modern day twist that builds off the original concept in their own way. NakiNagi was written by the same mangaka as Shikimori's Not Just a Cutie, a work that I read more of than I should have. I got 154 chapters into the 203 chapter story, and even by then he was stretching the story a little thin. It was basically just 2 jokes ad nauseum. Joke 1 is that the main character is criminally unlucky and hated by the cosmos, and joke number 2 is that his girlfriend, the titular Shikimori, is not just a cutie, but cool as well, protecting him from much of this misfortune that happens. This is not a premise that really changes much. I genuinely don't know how it went on for almost 50 more chapters. I was really not interested in reading whatever this mangaka wrote next. His art was great, but I did not think he had the chops to tell something with an actual story. Holy moly, he had the chops. The story follows Nakika and Nagisa, our titular Naki and Nagi, as Nakika supports Nagisa's crush on a boy in their class, Mozaki. Nagisa and Mozaki are adorable. The overwhelming bubbliness and embarrassment at being in love make all of Nagisa's attempts at getting closer very endearing, and Mozaki's shy but overall acceptance of these advances is very cute. Nakika is cheering Nagisa on, and also helping her out with a touch of magic. The way that NakiNagi plays with the story we know is by shifting the perspective to that of Nakika, the sea witch, and making her the protagonist of this tale. But what her goal and her past is obfuscated during the beginning of the cute love story that she is trying to support and protect. On the other hand, Goodbye Lara goes straight in episode 1 with the fairy tale we know. As I already mentioned, we basically hit all of the beats of the story we expect, with a few minor changes here and there for Flourish, but the ending, the failure, the chance to try again is exciting, especially with its jump to the modern age. Actually, the failure in and of itself is almost the most interesting part, and the emotions it elicits from the prince and from Lara as her time runs out, it's just so juicy and feels real and earned despite how fast we move through their story. It's so enrapturing. The other thing which we get from episode 2 is that Mari's fish, Gon, is actually the sea witch, which is very endearing. Something about her technically being Lara's aunt but confined to a fishbowl is what makes it especially adorable. I like it. They also use a lot more seafoam than the Disney interpretation, which is something I just like a lot. It adds to the aesthetics of these stories and makes them into more of a fairy tale than if it was omitted. They also, funnily enough, both use the 300 years part of the original tale, where the little mermaid fails and turns into air instead of sea foam, and is told that should she do good in this role for 300 years, she can join mankind with a soul. Both Lara and Nakika start their tales 300 years after the initial story, which is a neat tie-in. These stories are just so well written, and another similarity that they have is how they drip feed information and how they show don't tell. That is incredibly well timed in NakiNagi's case. It could be in Goodbye Lara's case too, but there's only 3 episodes out so far, and I've read NakiNagi twice. Actually, next week I'm going to read it again for my book club, so I'm kind of an expert. NakiNagi has short chapters, like really short, ranging from as few as 9 to just over 20 pages, the only real exception being the first chapter, but that's basically just a double of the average, sitting at 32. It's also really good at saying things with its art more than its dialogue, but it also chooses its dialogue very carefully. Like, the story starts with 3 chapters of Nakika using magic to help out Nagisa, slowly increasing in scale and being more overt with the whole it being tied to the sea thing, before the 3rd chapter ends with, in order, giant shadow under the boat that they're on, cute fairy tale panel of magic on the boat, they arrive home and Nagisa thanks Nakika for going to town with her, a smile from Nakika, and then holy shit, what is that in the water? It absolutely loves ending chapters with minimal dialogue and letting you sit with an emotion. It happens so many times, and they're all so good. There was one that I literally counted, chapter 33. It spends its last 7 pages without any dialogue, and holy moly do you feel it. Well, like, the whole ending you feel. And like, in its next chapter, chapter 34, it ends without dialogue, but all the impending horror of what you know is coming next, it's heartbreaking. I'm not crying. Similarly, in Goodbye Lara, there are some subtle ways that it sets the tone for its story without saying anything at all. The way that the show begins, the first episode has one actually, with the cuteness of Lara's shell opening to then immediately contrast it with her biting the head off of a fish that swims too close, its blood mixing with the water and its body floating away, its insides shown with indifference, setting a very distinct tone. Not unlike a this isn't your grandma's fairy tale or like this is one for adults, but in a very mature, subtle, and interesting way. This story has more to tell. This is iterated on later with the thing I mentioned that was gross earlier, that of her turning back into a mermaid and then into sea foam. These transformations are beautifully drawn, but harrowing and gross and scary to witness. Another minor thing with the mirrors. The mirrors are introduced at the halfway point of episode 1, before Lara goes to the surface, I think almost entirely so that when she reawakens after her failure, we get the incredible show me what happened here, without the re-explanation that these mirrors show you what you want, but also, most importantly, shatter on wavering emotions. Lara going from mirror to mirror, shattering them one after the other, desperate to know what happened but wrought with regret, is so good. Like, it's literally all just exposition told in flashback, but it's so much more than that because of the setup. And like, I don't know how else to explain it, but kind of the entirety of episode 2 of Goodbye Lara was just kind of an exceptional show of showing and not telling. It was so good. I think the obvious bit to mention is just how much they revel in Lara's lack of knowledge and Mari not really knowing how best to interact with her, just kind of trying to feel it out, and how that goes into the perfect hot chocolate scene. It's this long shot of Mari and Lara inside somewhere to get out of the rain, and Mari buys 2 hot chocolates to warm them up. You really have to see it to understand what I'm talking about, but the way that the two interact, Mari coming to terms with just how much Lara doesn't know, and Lara beginning to finally trust this stranger, is incredibly sweet. And starts with like a minute and a half of no dialogue. It's so good. As I said before with NakiNagi ending its chapters with an emotion, they also usually start chapters by unpacking the ones we left off with very careful dialogue, but always a bit of mystery. Chapter 3 ends with, hey, I think Nakika might be the bad guy and whatever's in the water, but chapter 4 immediately both doubles down on this with a sea creature calling Nakika an evil witch, but then also showing how she only looks genuinely happy when spending time with Nagisa. Then, chapters later, we get the reason she's called an evil witch. She killed the mermaid princess. However, that is then saved and unpacked later as the series goes on. It has this continual push and pull of conflicting information about Nakika's past and her actions in the present that is incredibly well-timed and paced. In Goodbye Lara, there's an exceptionally good line delivery in episode 2 that I want to mention. Episode 2 most noticeably starts with Lara being able to talk, which surprised me a little, because in the previous run that she had failed, the usual thing happens and she had no voice. But I also noticed that the way that they animated her tongue had a mark on it, and no other characters did. Then, halfway through the episode, a stranger trying to help Lara as she's bumbling around town looking for her lost ring mentions offhandedly to his wife, I wonder what's going on with her. I noticed that she had stitches on her tongue. And then she ditches the car at a stop because she's surprised by its speed and scared, and we drop that interesting little tidbit for later. But her tongue never stops having that mark, reminding you of it. Finally, the art style. I already mentioned that the mangaka for NakiNagi is the same mangaka that was behind Shikimori's Not Just a Cutie, and the way he transposes the softness from the cute parts of Shikimori over, somehow even softer and lighter, are electric when presented next to the grounding presence of Nakika, stone-faced and pitch black, drawn with almost no softness at all. Then on top of that, the little details of the panels, adding flair and whimsy, like in the full-page art in chapter 3, 9, 14, 19, 22, and so on, with the addition of this storybook-style frame they are presented with. The vibes are just immaculate. Like, I cannot stress enough how well the art style matches the story. You can feel it in every page just how much care was put into the locations, in the love and respect for the sea in every line, in the joy and wonder of being in love expressed as light as a cloud, in the pain and hurt of loss, with all the weight in the world. Similar to this contrast, Goodbye Lara has chosen to use an art style that mimics the style of older anime and animation, which I think better shows wonder and magic with a bit more potency than modern styles can, and also, with more potency, a splash of horror. People, not myself, love old dark anime. Despite that, it is well known how in cases where one has to fill in more of the blanks, like in old horror movies on VHS, the lack of detail makes things scarier. Old anime is the same, and in the case of Goodbye Lara, the way we see in all the horror and beauty of Lara turning to a mermaid, and then to foam in episode 1, and then from mermaid to human in episode 2, as well as in the horror evoked when Lara almost drowns, it's much more palpable than if it was portrayed in a more traditionally crisp art style you'd find today. And oh my god, the whimsy and magic are so good. Like the episode 1 ending waterspout with the moon backdrop, cinema. Every moment with Lara experiencing the world in episode 2 is a joy. In the opening, come on man, it vaporized me instantly. The way it switches aspect ratios and plays with the recurring use of a disposable camera reminds me of the love and wonder in everyday life, like, funnily enough, the first opening of You and I Are Polar Opposites, but with the song choice that makes me nostalgic for something more in the lines of Revolutionary Girl Utena. It is, most importantly, however, enthusiastically its own, and its own magic is worn proudly. The truth is, though, that not all in the world is as magical as it seems, and not every story has a happy ending. NakiNagi was axed early, receiving a rushed, albeit completely serviceable ending to its story in the short 38 chapters it was allowed to run for. There's actually a small bit that I realized on reread, where in chapter 32, one of them goes and asks the other mermaids to see if they know something about what's going on, and we get a couple quick panels of characters that we were clearly intended to be introduced to slowly and carefully, like the two that we did get to meet, but couldn't due to its cancellation. While I wish it was allowed to run much longer and be given more time to tell the slow story it wanted to tell, I'm happy that I was able to read it at all, because what we got was beautiful. And I hope, a little selfishly, that the echoes of NakiNagi I see in Goodbye Lara continue, and perhaps you get something out of it too. It's a very good show. And instead of saying goodbye, whether it be to Lara or to you, I instead wish good luck on whatever adventure you're currently on.